History has always favored one type of man. Not the loudest, not the most aggressive, not the one who reacts first. The men who shaped empires, commanded armies, and controlled entire rooms were known for something very different. An almost unsettling calm, while others panicked, argued, and lost control. They remained still. And that stillness made them powerful, because when the world becomes chaotic, most people do exactly the wrong thing. They react. Someone insults them. They respond immediately. Someone challenges them. They defend themselves instantly. Someone provokes them. They explode. And in that single moment, something important happens. They surrender control. Their emotions take over. Their judgment becomes clouded. And suddenly the other person is no longer reacting to them. They are controlling them. But history shows us something fascinating. The individuals who truly dominated life operated very differently. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth. Napoleon commanded armies across continents. Abraham Lincoln led a divided nation through civil war. And despite their differences, they shared one powerful trait. They were calm under pressure. They did not rush to react. They did not allow emotion to dictate their decisions. They paused. They observed. They controlled themselves before attempting to control the situation. Because in life, calm men win. But this calmness is often misunderstood. People think calmness means weakness, passivity, submission. But calm is not weakness. Calm is control. Calm is strategy. Calm is the ability to think clearly while others lose their composure. And this leads to something even more important. Because calm is not just an internal state, it is a social weapon. Nelson Mandela understood this better than almost anyone in modern history. Mandela spent 27 years inside a prison cell. 27 years. The world expected that when he emerged, he would be filled with rage. A man seeking revenge. A man ready to burn everything down. Instead, they encountered something far more powerful. Stillness. Mandela walked out of prison calm, measured, unshaken. And by refusing to become angry, he made his oppressors look small. His calmness did something anger never could. It disarmed them. It forced them to confront the moral weakness of their own position. Mandela understood something most people never learn. Anger is often a smoke screen. It hides the path forward. Calmness reveals it. Robert Greene, the master of power dynamics, once made an observation that is both simple and unsettling. The most dangerous person in the room is often the calmest. Why? Because while everyone else is blinded by emotion, the calm man sees the chessboard, he sees the traps, he sees the exits, he sees the future consequences of every move being made. This is not just about staying cool. This is about the strategic supremacy of the quiet mind. And this is why calm men always win. But to understand how this works in real life, we need to begin with the first principle of Stoic discipline. Rule 1. Control the first reaction. Every emotional mistake begins the same way. Something happens, and before you even think about it, your body reacts, your heart rate increases, your breathing changes, your muscles tense, your mind prepares for conflict. This reaction is ancient. It is the same instinct that once protected humans from predators. But in the modern world, this instinct often becomes a liability. Someone criticizes you. Your first instinct is to defend yourself. Someone insults you. Your first instinct is to respond immediately. Someone questions your competence. Your instinct is to prove them wrong. But the Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught something that changes the way you see these moments. It is not events that disturb us. it is our judgments about those events. The insult itself is not the problem. The situation itself is not the problem. Your interpretation is the problem. And that realization creates a powerful space. The space between stimulus and response. Inside that space lies your freedom. Most people never use that space. They react instantly. Emotion takes control before reason has time to intervene. But disciplined individuals learn to pause, even if only for a few seconds. And those seconds change everything. Emotion loses its grip. Clarity returns. Strategy becomes possible. Viktor Frankl described this idea perfectly. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose. The calm man uses that space. He does not surrender to impulse. He does not allow another person's behavior to dictate his state of mind. Because the moment someone else controls your emotions, they control you. And this leads to something even more powerful. Because when you refuse to react emotionally, something unexpected happens. You create silence. And silence is a weapon most people do not know how to handle. Rule 2. Silence is power. When people provoke you, they expect a reaction. They expect anger. They expect frustration. They expect words. But silence does something strange. It creates pressure. Imagine two people arguing. One person becomes emotional. They raise their voice. They attack. They attempt to provoke. The other person remains calm. They listen. They observe. They say very little. Suddenly the dynamic shifts. The emotional person begins to feel uncomfortable. Because silence removes the reaction they were counting on. Marcus Aurelius practiced this discipline constantly. As emperor, he faced endless criticism and betrayal. Generals betrayed him. Politicians challenged him. Enemies insulted him. But in his personal writings, he reminded himself of a simple rule. The best answer to anger is silence. This was not weakness. This was control. Silence denies your opponent the reaction they are seeking. And without that reaction, their aggression loses its power. Think about that for a moment. Have you ever remained calm in a situation where someone expected you to react? Maybe someone insulted you. Maybe someone tried to provoke you. But instead of responding emotionally, you stayed calm. What happened next? Did the situation escalate? Or did the other person suddenly lose momentum? Take a moment and share your experience in the comments. Because something fascinating happens when calmness replaces reaction. It confuses people. They do not know how to interpret it. They expected anger. They expected resistance. They expected a fight. But instead, they encounter stillness. And this stillness forces them to confront something they were not prepared for, their own behavior. And this leads to the next principle. Because calmness does something that emotional reactions never can. It disrupts your opponent's strategy. And that is where true psychological advantage begins. Rule 3. Calmness confuses your opponent. Emotional people rely on emotional reactions. They expect resistance. They expect anger. They expect confrontation. Their strategy depends on it. Because when emotions rise, thinking declines. The moment someone becomes angry, defensive, or desperate, their judgment begins to collapse. And that is precisely what manipulators rely on. They provoke, they pressure, they create emotional turbulence. Because when your emotions take control, your strategy disappears. But the calm man disrupts this entire pattern. He refuses to give the reaction others expect. And suddenly, the emotional person loses their footing. Abraham Lincoln understood this principle deeply. During his political career, He faced constant insults. Opponents mocked his appearance. They ridiculed his background. They attacked his intelligence. Many politicians would have responded with fury. Lincoln did something different. He listened. He waited. And when he spoke, his response was measured and devastatingly precise. His calmness made his opponents appear childish. Because when one person is emotional and the other is composed, the contrast becomes obvious. People begin to see who truly has control. And this leads to something most people never realize. The calmest person in the room often controls the entire room. But this is only the beginning. Because calmness does something even more valuable. It improves the quality of your decisions. And that leads us to the next rule. Rule 4. Calm thinkers make better decisions. Panic is the enemy of intelligence. When people become emotional, their thinking becomes narrow. Their focus shrinks. They rush into decisions without understanding the full situation. In moments of stress, the human brain becomes obsessed with immediate survival. And that instinct often produces terrible decisions. Calmness does the opposite. Calmness expands awareness. It allows the mind to process information clearly, to see patterns, to recognize opportunities. History gives us a remarkable example of this principle. Julius Caesar during the siege of Alesia. Caesar and his army were trapped in what seemed like an impossible situation. They were surrounded by enemies, outnumbered, exhausted. Many soldiers believed defeat was inevitable. Fear began spreading through the ranks. But Caesar did not panic. He did not shout. He did not allow chaos to take control. Instead, he did something extraordinary. He wore a bright scarlet cloak so his soldiers could see him clearly on the battlefield, and he moved calmly through the ranks, observing, thinking, issuing precise orders. His composure had a powerful effect. If the general was calm, the soldiers felt calmer. If the leader was thinking clearly, the army could continue fighting with confidence. Caesar's mind remained functional, while others were overwhelmed by fear. And because he remained calm, he saw opportunities others missed. He reorganized his defenses. He adapted his strategy, and against overwhelming odds, he won. Panic had blinded everyone else, but the calm man still saw the chessboard. This principle applies far beyond the battlefield. In business, in negotiations, in leadership. When others panic, the calm individual gains an enormous advantage. Because while emotions distort perception, calmness sharpens it. And this leads to something even more important. Calmness protects your most valuable resource, your energy. Rule 5. Protect your energy. Seneca once wrote something that should concern anyone who values their time. It is not that we have a short life, it is that we waste much of it. One of the fastest ways people waste their energy is through unnecessary conflict. Arguments online, office politics, petty disagreements. People spend hours defending themselves against opinions that will not change. But the Stoics understood something powerful. Your energy is limited. Every emotional confrontation drains attention, focus, and clarity. And the more energy you spend on meaningless battles, the less energy you have for meaningful pursuits. Think about the last argument you had. Was it worth the time? Did it improve your life? Did it change the other person's mind? Or did it simply drain your attention? Now imagine responding differently. Imagine remaining calm, observing the situation, choosing not to engage. Suddenly the argument loses its power. The conflict dissolves before it begins. Calm individuals do not fight every battle. They choose the battles that matter, and that choice preserves their mental resources. Take a moment to reflect on this. Think about the last argument you had. If you had remained completely calm, would the outcome have been different? Would the situation have escalated? Or would it have ended quickly? Write your thoughts in the comments, because the next rule explains something even deeper. Emotional people are easy to control, and that is where calmness becomes a form of psychological armor. Rule 6. Emotional people are easy to control. The moment someone can provoke your emotions, they gain influence over your behavior. If they can make you angry, they control your reaction. If they can make you defensive, they control your attention. If they can make you anxious, they control your decisions. Emotional reactions create predictability, and predictable people are easy to manipulate. This is why skilled negotiators remain calm. This is why experienced leaders remain composed during crises. They understand that emotional reactions reveal weakness. Carl Jung once observed that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But irritation also exposes vulnerability. When you become emotionally triggered, you reveal the exact buttons someone can press to control you. The calm man does something different. He observes his emotions without surrendering to them. He notices the impulse to react, but he does not act on it immediately. And because of that restraint, he remains unpredictable. Manipulation fails. Provocation fails. Emotional traps fail. But calmness does something even more powerful than protecting your autonomy. It commands respect. And that is where true authority begins. People recognize composure. They trust the person who remains calm under pressure. The calm individual appears steady, measured, unshaken, and others begin to follow their lead. Because authority does not come from noise. It comes from composure. It comes from discipline. It comes from control, and that is where true authority begins. The calm man does not chase power. His composure naturally creates it, and others sense it immediately. Rule 7. Calmness commands respect. The calmest person in the room often becomes the leader, not because they demand authority, not because they shout the loudest, but because calmness signals control, and control creates trust. When tension rises in a room, people begin looking for stability. They search for someone whose mind is still functioning clearly, someone who is not reacting impulsively, someone who appears grounded while others begin to unravel. That person naturally becomes the center of gravity. This is why calm leaders are so powerful. They do not absorb the panic of the crowd. They stabilize it. Nelson Mandela demonstrated this principle on a scale the world rarely witnesses. After 27 years in prison, many expected him to emerge angry. Anger would have been understandable, perhaps even justified. But Mandela chose something far more powerful. Calm, measured speech, controlled emotion, strategic patience. By refusing to become consumed by rage, he forced the world to confront something uncomfortable. His oppressors appeared small, petty, short-sighted. His calmness became moral authority, and that authority gave him the power to lead an entire nation through an incredibly fragile transition. The lesson here is simple, but profound. Aggression may create fear, but calmness creates respect. And respect is far more durable than fear. But calmness does something even more valuable than commanding respect. It protects your reputation. And reputation is one of the most powerful forms of long-term influence. Which brings us to the next rule. Rule 8. Calmness protects your reputation. Reputation is built slowly, but it can be destroyed quickly. Years of discipline can be undone by a single moment of uncontrolled emotion. A single outburst, a single reckless reaction, a single display of panic. People remember those moments. They remember when someone lost control. They remember when someone revealed weakness under pressure. But calm individuals build a very different reputation. They become known for stability, consistency, composure. When challenges arise, people trust their judgment because they have seen them remain calm when others became emotional. This reputation becomes incredibly valuable over time. It opens doors, it creates opportunities, it earns influence without the need for force. Angela Merkel became famous for exactly this quality. During her long tenure as Chancellor of Germany, she faced constant criticism from louder and more aggressive political figures. Many of her opponents relied on emotional rhetoric. They attempted to dominate conversations through volume and confrontation. Merkel responded differently. She remained calm, methodical, unflappable. And over time, something fascinating happened. Many of her loudest opponents burned out. Their aggression created temporary attention, but Merkel's calmness created long-term authority. She outlasted them. She outmaneuvered them, because emotional leaders exhaust themselves, but calm leaders endure, and endurance is a powerful advantage. But this raises an important question. Is calmness something people are born with, or is it something that can be developed? Take a moment to think about that. Do you believe calmness is natural temperament or trained discipline? Write your answer in the comments, because the truth is something many people misunderstand. Calmness is not a personality trait. It is a skill, and that leads us to the next rule. Rule 9. Calmness is trained. Many people believe calmness is simply part of someone's character. They assume some people are naturally composed, while others are naturally emotional. But history tells a different story. Marcus Aurelius was not born an emperor. He trained himself to think like one. Every evening he wrote reflections in his journal, reminding himself to remain patient, to remain rational, to remain disciplined. His famous work, Meditations, was never meant for public reading. It was a training tool, a way to strengthen his mind. The Stoics believed emotional control worked exactly like physical strength. It develops through repetition, through deliberate practice, through small moments of restraint. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you strengthen the muscle of self-control. Every time you choose observation instead of anger, you build discipline. Over time, those small choices accumulate until calmness becomes your default state. But there is an even deeper psychological reason calm individuals remain composed under pressure. They have accepted something most people resist: uncertainty. Friedrich Nietzsche described this idea with the phrase amor fati, the love of one's fate. To accept whatever happens as part of the path forward. Not something to resist emotionally, but something to engage strategically. William James, the father of American psychology, expressed a similar idea. He argued that the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. This ability changes everything, because once you accept the possibility of failure, once you accept uncertainty, once you accept that outcomes cannot always be controlled, something powerful happens. Fear loses its grip, and when fear disappears, calmness becomes possible. The calm man wins because he has already accepted the worst-case scenario, and once you are no longer afraid of losing, you are finally free to play the game perfectly. But there is still one final principle that ties all of this together, and it may be the most important rule of all. Rule 10. Calmness is true power. power is often misunderstood. People believe power belongs to the loudest voice, the most aggressive personality, the person who dominates the conversation. But real power is quieter than that. Real power is the ability to remain composed when everyone else loses control, to remain patient when others become impulsive, to remain silent when others demand reaction. The calm man does not surrender his mind to chaos. He observes it, he studies it, he moves through it deliberately. Because when you are calm, something extraordinary happens. Your brain continues to function clearly while others are overwhelmed. Your judgment remains intact. Your strategy remains intact. Your perception remains sharp. And that advantage compounds over time. Panic is a luxury you cannot afford. The moment you lose your composure, your thinking deteriorates. Psychologists have shown that intense emotional stress dramatically reduces cognitive performance. In simple terms, when you panic, your intelligence temporarily drops. The calm man wins because he is the only one still operating with his full intellect. This is why military leaders place such importance on something called command presence. Command presence is the ability to project calm when lives are on the line. When soldiers see their commander remain composed, they stabilize. When the leader panics, the entire structure collapses. Calmness spreads. But panic spreads faster. This principle applies to every environment. In business, in leadership, in family life, in crisis, people instinctively look to the calmest individual for direction, because calm signals competence, and competence earns trust. But calmness does not appear by accident. It must be cultivated, which brings us to something practical, because philosophy is powerful, but practice creates results. Calmness is not a personality trait. It is a discipline, a muscle that becomes stronger through repeated use. History gives us powerful examples of how disciplined individuals trained this quality. Dwight D. Eisenhower faced one of the greatest pressures of the 20th century, the planning of D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. Thousands of lives depended on his decisions. The pressure was unimaginable. Yet Eisenhower managed this stress through a simple principle. He separated the urgent from the important. He ignored the emotional noise surrounding the situation. Instead, he focused only on what truly mattered. The calm man does not chase every urgent signal. He protects his attention so he can focus on what is important. George Washington practiced a different form of discipline. Washington was known to have a powerful temper, but he understood that a leader of a new nation could not afford emotional reactions. So he imposed strict rules upon himself. He studied something known as the rules of civility, a code of personal conduct that forced him to remain composed in every public interaction, meeting after meeting, conversation after conversation. Washington trained himself to remain poised, not because it was natural, but because it was necessary. This is how calmness develops, through conscious restraint, through deliberate discipline, through daily repetition. Modern psychology offers a practical technique as well. Control your breath. One simple method is known as the 4-7-8 breathing pattern. Inhale slowly for 4 seconds. Hold your breath for 7 seconds. Exhale slowly for 8 seconds. This pattern activates the body's relaxation response. Your heart rate slows, your nervous system stabilizes, your brain regains clarity. If you control your breath, you control your mind. And if you control your mind, you control your actions. Over time, these small practices create something powerful. An inner fortress, a place within you that remains stable no matter what chaos appears outside. But the ultimate test of calmness comes when life becomes unpredictable, when pressure becomes intense, when events move beyond your control. History gives us remarkable examples of individuals who demonstrated this level of composure. Theodore Roosevelt once delivered a speech after being shot in the chest. Before leaving for the hospital, he finished the speech because he understood that panic solves nothing. Angela Merkel spent nearly 2 decades leading one of the most powerful nations in the world. Her leadership style was famously described as unflappable. While aggressive rivals rose and fell around her, Merkel remained calm, patient, strategic. She outlasted them all. In the end, life often becomes a battle of endurance. The man who burns hot burns out. The man who screams reveals his hand. The man who panics loses his way. But the man who remains calm continues forward. And eventually, when the dust settles, he is still standing. And when you begin to understand this, something shifts inside you. You start to see how many conflicts in life are not truly conflicts at all. They are invitations. Invitations to react. Invitations to argue. Invitations to give your attention to things that do not deserve it. Most people accept these invitations without thinking, but the disciplined individual learns something different. He learns that the strongest response is often the one that never leaves his lips. Imagine 2 people facing the same insult. One reacts immediately. Anger rises. The argument begins. The moment consumes his entire day. The other pauses. He observes. He remains silent. And within minutes, the moment disappears. The difference between these 2 people is not circumstance. It is discipline. One allowed the world to control his emotions. The other controlled his response to the world. And over years, these small moments shape identity. They shape reputation. They shape destiny. When you begin to practice these principles, something remarkable happens. The world around you does not change. People will still criticize. Disrespect will still appear. Chaos will still exist. But something inside you becomes different. Your reactions slow down. Your thinking becomes clearer. Your emotions become disciplined. And gradually, you begin to move through life with a different presence. The presence of someone who cannot easily be provoked. Someone who cannot easily be manipulated. Someone who has mastered himself. The Stoics knew this. The generals knew this. Modern psychology has proven it. You do not win by being the loudest. You do not win by being the most aggressive. You win by being the one who cannot be shaken. So the next time the world tries to drag you into its chaos, the next time someone insults you, the next time you feel anger rising in your chest, remember the inner fortress. Pause. Breathe. Observe. Because calm men win. If this message strengthened your discipline, consider subscribing and sharing this video with a friend who might be struggling to maintain calm in a chaotic world. This channel exists for those who choose clarity over chaos, discipline over impulse, and strength over noise. Remain calm, remain disciplined, because in life, calm men win.